Okay, so all right, guys. It's very we are on a Clerk recommendation series. We are going to check how to apply Clerk middleware over to the document. We are over to the document now, and we are over this document Clerk references, and we are on the middleware page, right? So what are we getting over here? This is the basic middleware setup that we can get. I've already copied and pasted it, and I'm going to explain you the logic very simply putting. See, the logic goes something like this, that we want some route to be accessible to the unauthorized user, and we don't want other routes to be accessible to the other users. All right. So how we do that? First of all, we have imported Clerk middleware and create route matcher. Create route matcher will do check the routes that we provide inside of this array, right? It will check, and then we have made it to a constant that, hey, is this route included into the create route matcher or not? As simple as that. Now you might be wondering, what is the matcher? See, matcher will always run, and it will be running on every single route that we mention over here, right? HTML, JPEG, the PNG, GIF, right? And we do not want the middleware to run over these routes. We want these routes to be fully accessible to everyone, anyone, no matter whatever, no matter whatsoever. We want these routes to be accessible. And we also want to run this for API routes. How are we saying that this is accessible? We have put an exclamatory mark. So if all the routes are provided here, that should not be run over that. And we have also provided API TRPC route. This is for the internal working of Next.js. All right. So we are working on Next.js. Now, what are we supposed to do? This is the most basic form of route that we get given. So, what are we supposed to do is this, that I want one thing to occur. We already discussed that I want some routes to be accessible to user, and I don't want others to be accessible, right? So, let us create two routes. Is public route or is protected route? Let's rewrite this for once. Const is public route that will be checked by how create a route matcher. Okay, we will put in an array. Let's say this is a public route, all the routes that are accessible from anywhere by anyone, we don't care. We are very sure that these routes can be accessible and there is nothing wrong that can be done, right? We cannot upload a photo on Instagram without accessing the public private route, but we can go to the login page of Instagram without any authentication, correct? So let us add slash sign in, and that is going to be our public route. And let's go with slash sign up to our public route. And similarly, let's say home. We'll be going to home with our public route. So this is our public route. Don't mind the errors. We will deal with it in a later stage. But right now, just understand that what are the public routes? Public routes are those that can be that are accessible to anyone without checking. Now we will go with is public API route. So this is considering that uh, the backend API that we are going to create, or if we are going to create it on the later stage, then we'll see if this is an API route. For example, let's create a very simple create route matcher and then array. We'll give it slash API slash videos. Let's say this is a route that we are going to provide for public to access on the backend side, right? All the front end routes are going to be slash home slash slash dashboard or whatever we are going to do, right? This is all the front end routes. The API routes are going to start with slash API, as we know the folder structure in our Next.js, correct? So this is how we are going to create it. Now, what are we going to do? We are going to say that, hey, hello, like let's create this logic out. Now we are given clerk middleware. This is something that we have imported from Next.js server. All right. So in clerk middleware, what are we going to do? We are checking if we are saying if user is logged in or not. All right. How are we going to check? We are going to import of we are going to create a const. We are going to create a const with user ID inside of the naming it user ID. And how are we going to check it? We'll use the auth function of clerk, right? We will check if the user is logged in or not. Next, we are going to check if what is the current URL, right? We are going to check current URL that we are having, and in const we'll put current URL. We'll create a constant current URL equals to new URL of request.url. All right. Now also we are going to check, okay, is the user is the user accessing dashboard. If it is accessing the dashboard, then we are also going to create a const for it. Is accessing dashboard equals to current URL dot path name equals to slash home. Okay, so this is what slash home is a public route, and we are ready to give it to the public, right? We do not want to protect it from other one. Now, what are we going to check is the user accessing the sign in route. This is going to be very helpful as there might be many problems that you can face as if let's say you are redirected. There is a multiple redirection error that occurs if we do not use the check. Const is accessing sign in page. All right. If it is accessing the sign in page, then how can we check if it is or not? Current URL dot path name equals to slash sign sign in. Fine. Now what else? We are also going to check is the user accessing API request? Is the user creating API? If it is creating an API request, so we are also going to make a const for it. That's say is API request. Then we are going to check from current URL dot path name dot starts with what slash API. So all the backend routes, right? All the routes are going to be covered over here. Fine. Now the logic is very simple. If you have made it this far, if you got what I'm doing right now, then you will be very easily understanding it. See, now what I want is if the user is logged in, how are we gonna check from? Where are we gonna check it from? User ID. If the user is logged in, then user ID will be present. So we are creating a condition if user ID is there, right? If user ID is there and is public route. If you're public, we are on the public route. Fine. How are we going to check it if we are or not? We will be checking it through request. This is the request that we are getting in Clerk middleware right here. So if it is the user is logged in and if it is on the public route, then what are we going to do? Then we also have to check another condition which says that is accessing dashboard. Is accessing dashboard means why are we saying no, it's not accessing dashboard? We are doing it because if it is accessing from dashboard, then we want to allow the user to go to any page that they are writing there they want to go, right? But if it is not accessing from dashboard, let's say I am saying that https localhost 3000 slash we are going to say for example sign in. Okay, if it is the case, then we want to redirect them to slash home. Why? That is the question. Because the user is already logged in. But if it is from dashboard, it is if it is from dashboard, then we don't want them to again go to sign in page and then again re-log in, right? So we will just want them to, if it is from dashboard, then we want them to go to that page. But if it is not from dashboard, we just simply want them to go to the home page, right? As simple as that. Now, what are we going to do? If this is the condition that if the user is logged in and if it is a public route and it is not from a dashboard, we will simply return next next response dot redirect redirect to a new URL of path slash home. Right, we want them to be redirected to home as they are already logged in. Request dot URL. Fine. This is what we have made so far. As simple as that. See now, like we have checked the condition that if the user is logged in, right? Now we let's say if it is not logged in, if there is no user ID, that is how we check if the user is logged in or not. Fine. So now if it is the case that let me check over. Okay. So this needs to be. Control X from here and Control V over here. Now, if the user is not logged in, then what we want to do? If it is not logged in and if it's trying to access a protected route, right? This is somebody who is saying Instagram.com slash Hitesh slash post 3, whatever. See, then what we want to do them is that if they are not logged in, right? We cannot access certain parts of Instagram if we are not a logged user. So in that case, what are we gonna do? We will simply redirect them to slash sign in. Brother, please go out and log in yourself first and then try to access your paths. Now, if it is accessing, we are already in the condition that if it is accessing what? If it is not a public route, not a public route of not a public route, how do we know that we are passing in request and is not a public API route also. We have also a public API route. So in that case, I want the middleware to redirect my a very smart user to next response dot redirect over to new URL with what? Sign in. So it's saying that, hey brother, you need to sign in first. I cannot let you access that parts without you being a signed user. Request dot URL. Fine. That is the format of writing that new URL of sign in and put that URL into the sign in part of the page. Hmm. Now the user is now signed in, right? And if similarly, very similar scenario, if the request is from a protected route for a protected route, API route, and the user is not logged in. Very similar to the this is like APIs for backend, right? So this is the same logic that will go over here as well. That if is an API request and is and it is not public API route inside of the request, then what are we going to do to the user? We are going to say that, hello, sir, I don't think you're appropriate to sign in over here. So return yourself to next response dot redirect to a new URL to the path slash sign in, and request dot URL. Fine, we are redirecting the user, all the front end and all the backend routes over here. But we also need to understand that we are not using is accessing sign in. Why did we write it if we are not going to use it? We are wrong. You are wrong. We are actually going to use it because it's very important to use that, as if we do not use it, then it will be a constant redirecting loop, and that will create the error that way you are redirecting very too many times. But if you are saying that if you are already on sign in page, then what are we going to do? We are not addressing that scenario, right? So in programming, we need to address every single scenario. If it is not a user ID, that means if it is not logged in and is accessing sign in. If it is accessing sign in page, and then return to what? If your user is not logged in, if it is accessing sign in page, then I want to say don't do anything. If it is already on sign in page, then why do we want to again redirect them to sign in page? That will constantly create a redirecting loop. So we are going to say return next response dot next. We will let the user have the sign in page access, right? We are saying okay, bye bye, you can have it. And in any other case, we'll say return, and in any other case we'll say next response dot next. Okay, they're just simply saying okay, you can do whatever you want to do. If you are not in the following conditions, I think your every case is covered, and then in any other case if it is not covered, then we are simply allowing them to take place. Okay, so this is a very simple way of accessing the middlewares and protecting your routes, while also keeping the very easy way of accessing everything.